This is the Haulin Assets podcast where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Haulin Assets podcast, episode number 124. We are recording this in March of 2023. This is about February 2022 financials, but
2023 financials.
Sorry, whatever. Okay.
We're not going back 13 months.
We're also
this.
recording early in the morning, unlike when we usually do this. So coffee hasn't kicked in yet, Chris.
I kind of feel like shit. Do I look like shit? I feel like I'm in a haze.
Oh, by the way, hi, Chris.
Oh, hey, what's going on?
I'm Craig. He's doing? Chris.
Yeah, I'm here. Just barely.
This should be an interesting one because, we do not usually record early in the morning, but, such is life.
I'm normally a morning person, but I don't know, something today, I'm feeling, something's feeling weird. Maybe it's the rain or I don't know.
I think let's start with an hour on the Oscars and what you thought of them, Chris, and then we'll get into trucking.
Was the Oscars, did that just happen?
Who's Oscar?
Who's this Oscar guy? Why are we talking about it?
Today we are talking about February 2023 financials. But before we do, of course, go to haulinassetsllc.com. Check out the full show notes there, including the numbers for today. If you're new to the show, then you should know that with all of these financials episodes, we break down the profit and loss statement, or at least parts of it, but you can check out the whole thing at haulinassetsllc.com. You can also go to motorcarrierhq.com and get all the tools and resources that you need to get yourself out on the road. And if you're already out on the road, well, then you'll have everything you need to do it better. Right, Chris?
Right. And speaking of show notes, I need to make a little bit of a disclaimer here. We're recording on an early morning because this is the morning that when we usually launch, and we usually at least record the day before. But this last couple of weeks has just been insane, and I've been late with everything, and I didn't get the show notes to the people that post them and do everything until late last night, while I was, get this, sitting in a Walmart distribution center getting unloaded.
That's right,
yeah,
Chris.
So
you are
I actually
again. You are a long haul, over the road trucker.
Well, I don't know if you consider the 38 miles one way long haul, but I mean, yeah, I
back in the saddle, baby.
Back in the saddle. Yeah, first time in a while I've actually like full blown delivered a load at the. Every once in a while we get this little short load from one of our main shippers. They have to haul from their facility to a Walmart, and they have their own truck and they do it most of the time. But sometimes, like actually last night, I saw their truck at the Walmart too. So they just must have had to do two loads, and obviously they only have one truck. So
right,
they had us do it, and Nate most of the time does those, but he had something going on last night, and so he picked it up, and then I just came and got the truck and delivered it. So. 38 miles, no incidents, got to the Walmart receiver.
Backed up the truck like a
truck.
champ.
I mean, let's put it here. As far as like places to back a Walmart distribution center's like child's play, like it's pretty, like they're big. It's like
they keep things open.
About any dummy can do it. And so, yeah, I mean, I did it. It was good. No incidents, didn't back into anything, didn't hit anything. So I'm pretty proud of myself. Then made it all the way back. Same thing. I didn't. Another 38 miles on the drive back. So got a good old 76 miles yesterday.
That sound you hear, Chris, is thousands of people across the country listening to this applauding you right now.
No, they're not, because 78 miles in one day is nothing for a driver. So they're all like, Chris, shut up.
I'm just glad you got my joke.
Yeah,
so
we do
now it's funny.
Yeah, almost 10 times that in a day. So,
all right. So, Chris, you also mentioned you met with somebody from Great West.
I did. Yeah. So
want to talk about that?
Yeah, it was really good. So
what is Great West?
Great West is one of the truck insurance providers. They're actually kind of really, there's, from what I can think of, there's kind of two that are kind of the premium insurance providers as far in the trucking industry that are really kind of the two juggernauts that, everybody, like if you're getting with one of them, you're you're pretty happy. They, if you get good pricing from them, they have the best coverages, and Great West is one of them. I'd say Century's the other. There's some other that are pretty good, but I think those two kind of set themselves apart. And I think Great West even a little bit more so sets itself apart. And we kind of experienced some of that. Because our insurance, our annual insurance renewal happens the beginning of April. And so we're kind of just starting the renewal process right now. And last year was the first year that Great West gave us a quote. It wasn't competitive pricing wise, so we ended up going with Century. We got some other quotes from other places, but again, like I said, like Century's pricing was really good, and they're one of the best, so that's what we ended up going with. And anyway, this time, because we have 10 trucks, you go into what they call their fleet category. It's where they start to look at you as a fleet. And so one of Great West's process is they've got a safety director that will kind of do a review of your company and your safety practices and procedures. And then they give a report to the underwriter kind of about how that meeting went, what they think about your processes, your safety culture, and how you're doing things and whatnot. And actually the guy that does that is somebody that I've known for probably 10 years. He's a really good guy, but this is the first time we've actually interacted where he's like looking at.
You're on the business end.
I'm on the business end. And so it was really cool process to see kind of how they go in, how they look at the safety culture. And it's something that we haven't experienced before. And it shows that they really take it serious. And they do a lot of things to kind of help you learn, get better, and be, have a better safety culture and do things right and hire good drivers and mitigate your risk. And
so you feel like a real fleet now, Chris.
Yeah, it kind of makes you feel a little bit more legit. Yeah, exactly. Feel like you're growing, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the insurance quotes. I'm sure we'll probably hit an insurance episode here briefly soon to kind of go over that whole process. And we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, all right. That was pretty cool.
Well, at the end of this episode, Chris, we're also going to talk about a really thoughtful Facebook comment that I went and looked up. You mentioned it, and so I went and combed through some of the Facebook comments and found it. It's a really good one. Yeah. We're going to talk about that at the end of the episode, but before we do, let's talk about February financials. Let's actually do these numbers. And it was an okay month. Right? Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah. We didn't lose money, so that's always a good thing.
There you go.
Spoiler. So yeah, it didn't make a whole lot, but this is February. February is usually one of the, if not the worst month of the year. It's one of the worst months of the year.
Now, is that because of rates? Is it because of the shortened month? What is it that makes February the worst?
All of the above. So yeah. I think there's, like, specifically in our situation, there's kind of three reasons. We'll get into that cause that. The short month is one of them. And it's just the rates. Like it's the lull, typically January and February, and I would say more so February than January, because I think January you get some of that. We're restocking after the fourth quarter rush,
right?
The holiday rush, everybody buying things, but then things really taper off end of January into February, and then sometime hopefully in March and April, produce starts to pick up in Texas, California, Florida, and stuff starts moving a little bit better. So
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, just considering it's February, we can't complain too much.
All right. Well, that being said, 10 trucks out on the road this month. What were the total miles run by the company?
83,391 miles.
Okay,
there we go.
83.3K. Yeah. All right. So that is pretty low. Was there a truck missing from the road?
Yeah. So we had one driver who quit, but kind of quit in a weird way. He had traveled out of country, was supposedly just going to be gone for a couple of weeks, and then decided to stay where he's at for probably a significantly longer period of time.
Okay.
And so we just can't hold that truck for him as long as he's decided he wants to stay away. So
Is it Sam Bankman-Fried? Be honest.
I don't know who that is, so I don't think so.
Okay, never mind. 6 people got my joke, Chris. All right, and they're laughing their heads off.
I'm not culturally cool, so I mean, there's probably more than 6 people. Just because I don't get something.
So you had a truck sitting. Any other trucks sitting? Because even with 9 trucks, 83,000 would be pretty low.
Well,
I guess it was.
We had
February.
some weather. It's a shorter month, and so you think about it. I mean, our fleet as a whole is probably traveling, 5,000-ish miles a day, and so you really have, 2 to 3 fewer days. I mean, so you're probably talking a good 10 to 15,000 miles just because it's a shorter month.
Right.
And so if you add that 15,000 back in, and it's a lot closer to where it should be with like essentially 9 trucks. Running.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
That's a big part of it. And then also, another factor in this whole thing is weather. I mean, we're still dealing with it seems to me like this is one of the worst years in a while.
Say it, Chris. Say the words. I-80.
I-80. Yeah. It was one of the worst years in recent memory for I-80 getting shut down, just how often it happened and for extended periods of time. And so that definitely had an impact. Okay.
So just over 83K miles run. How many Deadhead miles then?
4,142.
Okay.
5%. Pretty good.
Yeah. I'll take that. And that brought in a total revenue of what?
$184,606.48.
Okay. It seems like a pretty decent number.
Yeah, not terrible. I mean, if you look at the rate per mile, so just jump into that. The all-in rate per mile was $2.21. Better than last month. Not the greatest in the world, but still not terrible. Like it moved for February. It was decent. And I think part of that though is you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, because if you remember in when we were talking the January numbers, we had a bunch of loads at the end of January that didn't get delivered because I-80 got shut down. And so they got pushed into February, which actually that's another part of the reason that February numbers were as good as they were. They could have been worse, but that reduction in January's numbers that helped February is kind of a big chunk of that.
Right. Okay. All right. So, any other specific numbers that you want to pull out I should say before we talk about the actual profit and or loss.
One thing that's kind of cool that happened this month, you talk about the total revenue. We actually hit our 1,000th load hauled.
Hey, there you go.
With Haulin Assets since the Haulin Assets began. That's kind of a pretty cool milestone.
And I'm a little disappointed now that my studio isn't getting showered with confetti that will stick around for the next 2 years.
I'll remember that for next time. Next time we have a little announcement to make, I'll just whip it out of my pocket and we'll do some confetti make you happy. I mean, are you still finding some from the last time?
If you look on the lights, I have a light on my face right now, and there's confetti inside the light that I haven't gone in and cleaned out yet. So whenever our 100th episode was, like a year or more ago,
it was just about a year ago. Yeah.
We predicted I would be cleaning up confetti forever, and we were right. So so 1,000 loads. That's pretty cool. Cool. And it'll obviously pick up a lot faster now that you have 10 trucks running. You'll do your 2,000th load and nobody will notice. Yep. In a few months.
Yeah, right? Probably more than a few months, but it definitely won't take 4 more years to get to that 2,000th load.
Still, that's pretty cool.
We're almost 4 years. Next month will be 4 years. Yeah.
So, okay, with that 1,000th load and with 184 and change, 184K in revenue, what did that do profit-wise?
The profit for the month was $7,279.94.
That is a thin margin.
It is a thin margin.
That is, okay. Now, 7,000. What'd you say? 7.2. Okay, or 7.3. 7K. As I'm going back in time and thinking about previous financials episodes that we did, you often talked about how there was this idea that just because it says profit doesn't mean we're actually making money, because there are other expenses that don't show up immediately on the P&L, and we want to buffer with several hundred to $1,000 per truck per month before we can start saying, oh, okay, we're actually making money now. Yeah. Is that kind of where we're at? We're like at that Yeah. It says 7K, but with 10 trucks out on the road, we're kind of breaking even.
Yeah, we should be higher than that. And if you look at it on a cash flow basis, is again just to kind of reiterate this, I will probably never stop talking about this, and I need to get to the point where I'm including a monthly depreciation amount in this figure, because that'll really give us a more true idea. And if we did at this point, it would show a loss. And that depreciation amount is essentially, so if you remember on your truck payments, this is a question we get all the time, like even though we talk about it somewhat regularly. So we'll just talk about it again. Like every time you make a payment on your truck, it's divided into two categories: your interest expense, and then the principal piece that goes towards paying off the loan.
Right.
And so on your on the profit and loss statement, the piece that shows up on the P&L is that interest expense. The principal payment does not show up because you're not you're paying off a loan for that was for an asset. And so it doesn't show up on the profit and loss statement, because it's really, that's part of your profit. You're just paying off a loan with that cash. And so from a cash flow standpoint, our total principal payments across the 10 trucks right now, and this is, again, it's a number that fluctuates a little bit from month to month, but it's about $20,000. So if you think about it, we're probably pretty close to a $13,000 cash flow loss.
Right. So yeah, it's just one of those things I always want to bring up, because 7K sounds like, okay, well, razor thin margin, but hey, at least we're making money. Well, not so fast.
You're not going to, at this point, you're not going to operate like this forever. If we were to do let's say just a $10,000 profit forever, like we'd eventually run out of money, and we wouldn't be able to function. We need to get to that point where we're, our break even point is more like $20,000 in net income, and we need to get over there. But with that being said, this kind of relates to that Facebook post. Should we just jump into it?
No, it does. It's a great segue, but let's hold off, because I know there are a couple of other numbers from the P&L that we wanted to pull out, and then we can come back to that total number.
So we'll circle back around and talk about that.
But let's talk about fuel expenses, repairs and maintenance, all that stuff. What numbers do you want to pull out first?
You mentioned fuel, so let's just kind of start with that. So our fuel expense total, just raw fuel expense for the month was $58,481. So it's moving down. Fuel prices, we're seeing a little bit of relief pressure-wise on fuel prices, which is good. And so the total percentage of revenue was 31.7%, which is better than it was last month. Last month it was 35.2.
It was up above 40 for a while there, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So in December, it dropped all the way down to 30%. And part of that was not because fuel had lessened, but we got a higher amount of revenue. But then the previous months before that, November was almost 45, October 41, September 40, almost 47. And so, yeah, it's been pretty high. So actually, if you look across, I'm looking across all of last year right now. January, February, March of last year was before things really started to go bad. And those were good months. But previous to that, our lowest of last year was actually the same amount, 31.7%.
How about that?
So hopefully we can keep moving that trend in that direction.
Yeah. And that's maybe that's something we could devote an entire episode to. I mean, we have talked about how to mitigate fuel expenses before, but it's one of those subjects that it should be top of mind for everybody who's out on the road. So it never hurts for us to revisit it and talk about what you're doing, maybe as a fleet instead of as an individual driver. With
Motor Carrier HQ, we that is something there's going to be an episode in the near future. And with Motor Carrier HQ, we've got a fuel card program with an app and everything that I think I've talked a little bit about it in the past, that we're developing, that it's getting really, really close. And it's starting to get some, we've got a handful of fleets on it, and we're starting to get enough gallons flowing through it, and
so to speak.
Love
it.
so that and the app is like a differentiator. Like other companies have fuel cards, but this app is really cool because it helps you. Like it's lessons I learned when I was driving on trying to find the best fuel pricing, and it can help completely ease the difficulty of finding the best fuel price. And we're starting to be able to get really good pricing with it, and we think we've got one in the hopper that's going to be a game changer.
Nice. Okay. All right. Well, that's fuel expenses. What about repairs, maintenance? Anything significant happening there?
We had some trailer damage from a couple incidents, $2,600. So not a huge amount.
I just noticed it was, a little higher than normal, right?
It was a little higher than normal. Yep. And this is one of the things that's kind of interesting in that conversation with the Great West fleet rep. He said, you're growing, you're a bigger fleet, there's no way around it. You're just going to start to see more claims as you get bigger. It happens. Don't be shocked. Cause we've at this point have been like, as far as like legit insurance claims and accidents, like we've had one small one that wasn't like, less than the premium that we pay in a month.
Mm-hmm.
And so not huge, but he's like, yeah, it's just going to happen. Like, I don't care how good you are as a fleet, you're going to have claims. And that was kind of like, in a way, a little bit of a relief to hear that, like from an insurance guy saying like, we know that that's going to happen. It's
baked in.
It's baked in. So that was kind of cool. So like we're obviously with that kind of like the damages that are caused by mishaps. I mean, crap happens. That's one of the things that I talk about with people all the time, whether it's in my, my military career or in any of my businesses. Like, I don't expect perfection out of people. Like we're all going to make mistakes at some point. Just, don't let it become a habit.
Sure. Yeah. Let me ask you one last thing, which is, I know there was an issue with the water pump on truck one, and truck one has been, shall we say, an issue truck for a little while now. What's the story there? What are the plans with truck one? What do you think you guys are going to do?
Yeah, so we had $7,200 in repairs last month, and a good chunk of that was truck one. The water pump went out, and there are a few other things. That truck is actually coming off the road. We've got another truck coming online here in the next week or two, and so the driver that drives truck one likes a manual, and the new truck we're getting right now is an automatic. So, and she said, I'll go in that automatic for a little while because the next truck we're getting is a manual, and we'll switch her over to that one. So we're actually going to pull truck one off the road here very, very soon.
Are we going to have some sort of ceremony? Will there be taps playing in the background?
I like that. Yeah, we probably should do something.
It'll be sad when truck one goes away, but such is life. We can't be too sentimental about these things. Actually, wasn't that part of the comment? We should get to the Facebook comment.
Let's go. Jump in.
And to be honest, I read a bunch of Facebook comments last night. Thank you, everybody who goes on Facebook and does that. I love reading those comments. And so I don't remember if that was part of this, but somebody was saying, hey, when are you going to take truck one off the road? Come on, man.
Soon.
Yeah. But there was a great comment. It was very long and very thoughtful. Chris, do you want to talk about that? Where did this come from, and what were they saying? So
one of the big things that I kind of gleaned from this comment was, I mean, he talked about, it seems like, your profit. He was talking about one specific month, and I can't remember which month it was. Maybe you do, but the profit wasn't all that great. I mean, it was a profit, but it wasn't all that great. And he's all like, are you satisfied with that? It seems like you shouldn't be satisfied with that.
Right. Kind of hoping that you would be raging against the microphone a little bit more at how low the profit margin was. Right.
Yeah. And he's absolutely right. We're absolutely not satisfied with this. You look at this month, this is probably a pretty similar month to whatever month he was commenting on. It's not a great month. I mean, yes, we're making money, but no, it's not a great month. And, kind of as we've grown, we've kind of had some growing pains, and there's been some challenges with that. And the market's kind of tough right now, but no, that's not great. We want to get to the point where I think like my bare minimum where I'm like, okay, we're doing all right, is a profit of about $3,000 per truck. But I really want to get more to the $5,000 a month per truck. And then I think at that point, like that's kind of where we would like to be. And I think if we can get to that point, we're sitting in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Okay. So 5K. But, you know, as I was reading through this comment, this guy was talking about somebody who I think put a video on YouTube and it was like, we made $1 bajillion with a, you know, $5,000 truck, where, you know, that's some explosive growth and profit. Why don't you shoot for the moon that way? You know, why would you even be happy with 5K per truck when it seems like you can get so much more?
So the company that he's talking to, it's actually another podcast, and they do a great job. But it's a different thing. They kind of focus on, they lease on to Landstar, and so the guys that they bring on, from what I understand, they're not like company drivers, and they are leased. They kind of lease onto them, and so you know it's you're kind of, to a certain extent, you're comparing apples to oranges. And they've also been around a lot longer, have developed more of a relationship with Landstar and who they lease to, and they can bring business to Landstar, and then Landstar takes a cut, and they get a cut of it, and it kind of works like that. And yeah, they do some pretty fascinating things, especially they buy all used trucks that they get really cheap, and then they fix them up just how they like them. And that's like an owner operator that's getting a cut of the profits is going to be willing to, you know, sit in a truck that's not as nice of a truck because they kind of get a cut of that. Where company drivers, it's a completely different ballgame. And like, I'm not trying to take away from what they've done, because they've done some great things, and it's awesome. But they've also been doing it a little bit longer than we have, and their kind of their end game is different than what our end game is, and but they've done some good things, and there's a lot of things you can learn from what they've done, like especially if you're an owner operator, like some of the stuff they do with their trucks and how they maximize the fuel economy. Like their trucks are driving like 55 miles an hour.
Right.
Our drivers aren't going to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to get there, get back.
Yeah.
And we might as well give them a shout out. It's Blue Ribbon Logistics, right?
Yeah.
And so people can check that out. Just be aware, it's a very different style of how to make money in trucking. What you're doing, as I understand it, Chris, is a little more like, I want to grow this core. I want to grow my company, not Landstar's company or whatever, right? And so it's a longer term play, from what I understand, than the quicker profit that they're able to turn around.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. Like they've got very long-term perspective on things too, but like we're in this for the long game, the long.
Oh, don't do it, Chris. Oh,
we're in this for the long game. And that's kind of the way I've been my entire life. Like I'm not an instant gratification guy. Like I am willing to make some early on sacrifices to have something explode later on down the road. And I've seen that happen time and time again. And it's going to happen with Haulin Assets. We're just not quite there yet. And the market right now is not making that easy either. But it's one of those things is sometimes you just kind of have to survive that downturn like it is right now, so that you're around. Like we talked the other day about having your hook in the water. We want to have our hook in the water when things start to
turn around,
to get better.
So let me ask you one last question before we cut and run for today, and that is profit margin, because that's kind of what this comment was getting at, and what we're talking about today is this razor thin profit margin. Do you have a percentage of what a trucking company like yours would be aiming for? You know, you think about like a restaurant, that is a thin profit margin. They're operating at 2-3% tops, right? Walmart was famous for, I don't know what they're going to do these days after the great logistics crash of 2020, but they were famous for operating on a profit margin of less than 1%. They just went for volume, right? Yeah. And so they're satisfied with that lower profit margin. What that means, profit margin, is how much you're making versus how much you're spending to make that money, right? And so if you're making $100K a month, but you're spending $99K to make that $100K, your profit margin is 1%. Do you have a percentage for a trucking company like yours? What's healthy for growth?
So the average, and I don't have an exact number, but the average, like what I've heard in the industry over the years, is about 10% profit margin. And that's, we're not even really, I mean, we have some months where we're over that, some that, a lot that we're under, like we're like a 10% profit margin at $183,000 would be 18K. And if you have a 10% profit margin after depreciation, you add depreciation back in, that's actually starting to get
real good,
decent. Yeah. It's starting to get pretty good. So I think if you can get that, I'd really like to get to the 15 to 20. That's getting really, really good. And I think that's one of the things. So, the Blue Ribbon Logistics, I think that's one of the things that they do really, really well, is they've got really good profit margins because of how they manage their fuel expenses, how they do some stuff with their trucks. They don't have to do oil changes very often and do a lot of different really cool things like that. And in fact, so one of the guys on it his name is Chris. I think it's Chris and Larry, if I remember right. Chris and I have actually had some conversations. It's been a few years since we've had them, but like, I think the world of those guys. I think they do a really good job in some of the things that they do. And we can glean a lot of good information from listening to different people and seeing different perspectives. And I think a lot of what they do is great. It's just, they're doing something different than what we are. And so,
well, people can go check them out.
Yeah, for sure.
Right after they subscribe to the Haulin Assets podcast, if they haven't yet,
they
can go check out Blue
plug.
Ribbon. Yeah. No, it's we're happy to plug them. It's a great product as well. So, thanks everybody for listening, and don't forget to check out the Facebook page. Leave your comments there. You can also do that at Haulin Assets. Let me try that again. HaulinAssetsLLC.com. You can do that in both places. And you can also leave us a review, which we appreciate. And what I'm talking about there is going on, Stitcher or iTunes or whatever it's called these days, or Spotify, and leaving that 5-star review. Maybe write something out if you're feeling ultra generous. But the reviews help us out. We do appreciate it. It helps other people find the podcast. Every time you get a good review, it pings that algorithm that, hey, people are talking about this show. And so, if 10 of you do that today, oof, Chris, just imagine.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
All right.
We appreciate all those reviews. They help a ton.
And with that, we will see you all in a couple of weeks. Chris, have a good one.
You too. Thanks, Craig.